first light bled over the eastern Afghanistan ridgeline, thinning the night into steel gray. The air felt razor-thin and cold, while winds slid over broken rock above a valley holding a small compound. Gray cliffs stacked like teeth funneled the wind and made every breath feel measured and thin there. Lieutenant Ethan Cole raised a hand and the Navy SEAL element settled onto the spine of the hill, silhouettes tight against the stone. Petty Officer Second Class Noah Grant took over watch. Glass, steady. While Petty Officer Second Class Caleb Brooks guarded the rear and traced their exit route with patient eyes. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake, a United States Air Force combat controller, moved half a beat behind to keep the wider view and radios alive. And PRC 117G rode her shoulder for SATCOM. ANPRC 152A sat on her chest for VHF and UHF, with a pre-filled 9-line CAS card, a marked MGRS map, and a folded frequency notebook secured on her kit. The mission was observation only, and most of the team saw her as just comms. She felt an unseen clock in the wind and checked the nets as if the next breath mattered. Beside Grant, AMK-13 Mod 7 rested on its bipod, a quiet tool no one expected to land in her hands. The eastern mountains of Afghanistan rose in stepped ridges that stacked toward a pale sky. Terraced slopes broke into shelves of slate and gravel where the wind curled hard and then snapped back, never blowing the same way twice for long. Every breath felt thin, and every sound died against gray stone. Below the ridgeline, a narrow valley held a squat compound of mud walls and tin roofs. Quiet under the fading night, visibility reached far. Yet the shifting gullies pushed wind across sightlines in sudden bursts that bent grass and dust. The terrain offered reach for optics, but punished careless movement with exposure. Lieutenant Ethan Cole kept the Navy SEAL element silent, with hand signals and measured breaths. Petty Officer Second Class Noah Grant settled into overwatch, glass steady on the valley. His MK-13, Mod 7 inches, 300 Winchester Magnum resting on a Harris bipod with a loopholed Mark V HD. The rifle waited cold and ready, a precise tool for narrow windows. Petty Officer Second Class Caleb Brooks guarded the rear and traced their route across broken folds of rock. He watched spurs that could hide a flanking push and kept the team tight to skyline. Half a beat behind, Staff Sergeant Avery Blake, a United States Air Force combat controller, carried an ANPRC 117G for SATCOM and ANPRC 152A for VHF and UHF. Avery kept a MGRS map, a frequency notebook, and a pre-filled 9-line close air support card tucked under elastic bands. As a JTAC qualified controller, she held authority to coordinate air support when aircraft arrived on station, using the 9-line and choosing the type of control. She kept correlation through terrain description and grid accuracy while managing a pace plan of primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. Her marksmanship did not come from an organic sniper billet. It came from a long-range package in the combat controller pipeline and later cross-training alongside special operations teams. Enough to make solid wind calls and first-round decisions at distance. She understood her place on this patrol. Yet the rifle knowledge lived beside the radios like a quiet second language. Rules of engagement were clear. The mission was observation and collection, with no direct engagement unless in self-defense or when a clear intelligence gain appeared under the approval of the lieutenant. Paper maps rode in waterproof sleeves and a small device running ATAK could mark routes. But the team kept the focus on silence, discipline, and patience across the changing wind. The briefing room held the last quiet before dawn. Red light low against a wall map of the Eastern Valley. Outside, the sky was a thin slate, and the air already felt sharp enough to cut a breath in two. Lieutenant Ethan Cole set the tone with simple tasks and clear lanes of fire. No bravado. Only discipline before movement. Rules of engagement were strict. Observe and collect. To avoid contact unless self-defense or an intelligence gain under his approval. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake. United States Air Force Combat Controller. Handled radios and air picture like practiced muscle memory. She built a pace plan. Primary. Alternate. Contingency. Emergency. Matched authentication. And synced a time hack with a team clock. Her ANPRC 117G carried SATCOM traffic while an ANPRC 152A covered VHF and UHF for the local nets. A frequency notebook rode beside a marked MGRS map and a pre-filled 9-line close air support card under elastic. She set a game plan for Type 2 control, expecting to talk aircraft on using terrain features and precise grids. Initial points. Safe headings. And egress options lived as pencil notes that would tighten once aircraft checked in on station. Role assignments followed with the same calm. Lieutenant Ethan Cole managed sectors and signals, keeping the element quiet and patient. Petty Officer Second Class Noah Grant ran Overwatch, glassing the valley, and kept a Mach 13 Mod 7 ready nearby. Petty Officer Second Class Caleb Brooks owned the rear, watched dead ground, and guarded their exit route across broken rock. Cole expected patience from everyone. Eyes open, boots quiet, and no stray silhouette against the skyline as the light rose. Avery marked likely vantage points on the map and built pre-planned 9 lines for the compound and approaches in case. She rehearsed talk on phrases in her head and trimmed radio brevity for the small team net before stepping off. Quiet confidence filled the room like a steady breath that knew a storm would come. The team set in along a broken ridge before dawn, bodies tight to the stone to stay below the skyline. Cold wind slid along the slope and carried dust in short breaths that faded into the valley. The compound far below sat quiet and small, a stubborn square in a wide field of gray. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake checked her radios with practiced ease. ANPRC 117G handled SATCOM, while ANPRC 152A covered the line of sight nets. And she listened to team, deconfliction, and a standby air channel at once. A thin ripple touched one net, and she logged the exact moment in her notebook. Through the glass, Petty Officer Second Class Noah Grant caught a thread of movement beyond a far spur. He eased the focus and judged distance by terrain cuts and scale. Petty Officer Second Class Caleb Brooks shifted his angle and confirmed 3 small groups moving with discipline in a staggered pattern. Lieutenant Ethan Cole raised a hand and shifted the element to a higher state of caution without breaking silence. He pointed Avery toward extraction planning and kept the hilltop quiet with short signals and slow breaths. They stayed hidden and let the terrain do the talking. Avery marked 3 suspicious points on the MGRS grid and wrote clean bearings beside each one. She estimated range using mil relation and compared it against the dope she carried for the steep ground. If her position allowed, she would confirm with a laser rangefinder, but she trusted the read of rocks, dust, and the wind that hunted along the slope. The quiet grew heavy in a way that made time feel slower and sharper. No one fired, and no one spoke beyond a few clipped words that kept the net clean. Inside her head, she walked the pace plan and shaped options, watching lines and angles settle like a map of intent across the valley. The first shot split the morning and left a hard echo rolling along the ridge. A second cracked from a new angle. Then a third punched up from low ground. The quiet folded into a web of fire that pulled tight around the team. A PKM on a distant spur hammered long bursts that shredded rock into dust. Each string pinned the skyline and forced bodies flat to stone. The valley answered with short, clean snaps that felt like SVD fire locking down every peak. A single RPG tube waited for movement and showed itself only as a cough of smoke behind a fold. Its timing pushed fear into the gaps between bursts. The effect was control, not chaos. Lieutenant Ethan Cole signaled for Noah Grant to shift and find a lane. Each rise of an elbow drew a stitch of rounds that chewed the lip of cover and sent chips into his scope. Caleb Brooks tried to mark a position and got shoved back by the next burst before his hand left the rock. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake, United States Air Force Combat Controller, slid low behind a narrow shelf and brought the ANPRC 117G to life. She reported troops in contact to the Joint Operations Center and requested close air support. The answer came back cold and clear. Assets delayed due to low ceiling and a manpads threat. Estimate about 30 minutes. Avery read it back, logged the time, and shifted her mind to the ground fight. She watched muzzle cadence and dust signatures and the way wind knifed the slope. She let patterns stack until the picture felt honest. The east face showed a cave mouth that spat 3 shots and then went quiet for about 6 seconds. A southern shelf produced disciplined single rounds and short position changes. The west slope stayed under a camo net with few shots. More like a brain than a trigger. She wrote ranges that fit the steep ground. About 650 meters to the east cave. About 720 meters to the south shelf. Near 800 meters to the west net. The team net stayed clean under her hand. Only short words like contact, break, and set moved across the radio. She marked MGRS grids for each shooter and added bearings and early mill holds for a 300 Winchester Magnum dope card. Time stretched as the PKM chewed trenches into rock. Glass on Grant's rifle flickered with each impact as slivers jumped the lens. Brooks could not keep a mark for more than a heartbeat before fire cut the angle again. Wind pulled left along the ridge and then died in the draw. And Avery tracked the shift with dust and dead grass. She laid options beside the pace plan and checked them against the way the field was being shaped. The trap wanted them to move and then punished each attempt. Her voice stayed level when she keyed the team net. The nests would have to go quiet, or the clock would beat the team long before aircraft ever checked in. It was a cold truth laid over warm stone. And it pointed to the next hard choice. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake absorbed the delay without ripple. Low clouds pressed on the peaks, while a suspected manpads threat kept aircraft away. She breathed slow behind the rock and shifted from waiting for angels to building the bridge they would need once weather broke. She opened her notebook and drafted a full 9-line for the compound. Initial point. Safe heading. Elevation. Target by MGRS. Simple description. And backup mark using an IR pointer if conditions later allowed. Friendlies plotted with an egress that avoided gun positions and bad ground. She set the game plan for Type 2 control, given broken sight lines and steep terrain. Correlation would ride on terrain, talk on with grids, cross-checked, and landmarks kept simple and repeatable. No aircraft on station meant no initial point inbound and no cleared hot. Just preparation. Radios ran inside a tight pace plan. Primary and alternate covered the team net, while contingency and emergency lived on SATCOM through the ANPRC 117G. The ANPRC 152A held VHF and UHF, and she verified authentication and a time hack so every clock matched. The weather still blocked a stack from forming, so there was nothing inbound to manage. Avery kept the internal net disciplined with short calls like contact, break, and set. She sketched a simple hold plan for later, with altitudes layered above terrain and threat rings marked. Then she turned the map into math. Dust streamed left and grass trembled while she wrote wind calls beside each shooter. Dope for the MK-13, mod 7 inches, 300 Winchester Magnum set baselines. And she penciled mill holds for 650. 720, and near 800. Elevation and angle pushed her to check cosine effect, and how a missed wind would grow with distance. She compared mil relation ranges against the slope, and kept a laser rangefinder ready if the angle opened. The rifle was not in her hands, yet the numbers waited in her margins. Calm settled in her voice as she repeated the delay and resumed the scan. The plan would snap into place the second a call sign checked in overhead. Until then, she held the geometry on the ground. A quiet controller stitching sky to stone without a single engine in stack. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake felt the fight tighten with each burst. Close air support was still minutes away, and the ridgeline was carved into lanes of fire. She keyed the team net and told Lieutenant Ethan Cole the sniper nests had to go quiet or the clock would beat them. Cole answered like a leader who kept people alive. He reminded her she was there for radios and control, not the team precision shooter. Noah Grant slid the Mach 13 Mod 7 across stone toward her. A silent proposal in trust. Cole weighed the risk in a breath and gave a nod. Authority stayed clear. Responsibility stayed his. But the shot would be hers. The element settled into the rock while she moved. Avery slid into prone and pressed the Harris bipod until it bit the stone. She safed and worked the bolt to check feed. Seated the AICS magazine, and confirmed chamber with a press forward. The loopholed Mark V HD came into focus as she dialed dope for 300 Winchester Magnum and checked parallax. Natural point of aim settled as her hips and toes found the ground. Breath in, breath out, pause on the bottom, and build a straight press to the rear. She kept the team net clean with short calls like contact and set, while her eyes tracked dust, grass, and the cadence of muzzle flashes. Roll and skill met in a narrow space where hesitation would kill. She felt the wind pull left along the ridge and then ease, and she logged it without a word. The Mach 13 pressed into the rock. Her breathing slowed, and a heavy stillness gathered right before the fight turned. She settled behind the Mark 13 Mod 7 and let the rock carry the weight. The Harris bipod bit into stone, while the Leupold Mark V HD came into crisp focus. Her cheek found the stock and the rifle felt like a calm line drawn through the wind. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake owned the setup like a checklist. AICS magazine seated. Bolt forward. Safety verified. And glass clear of glare. She breathed once and let the world narrow to the east cave. She confirmed natural point of aim and watched the cave mouth pulse with heat and shadow. Diopter and parallax came true. And her dope matched 650 meters on the 300 Winchester Magnum card. Dust slid right to left across the sightline and asked for a half mil into the wind. She let the reticle live on the hold, not the hope. Breath down to the bottom and pressure straight to the rear until the break surprised no one. The rifle bucked clean, and she rode the follow-through to watch the figure fold back into dark. Silence took the east for a long 2 count. The cadence that had cut the hill went quiet, as if someone had closed a door on the sound. She cycled the bolt with a short, sure stroke, and checked the safety with a touch. The team net stayed clean under her hand. Only set went over the air to mark the change without noise. She shifted her body, not her head, to keep cheek weld steady for the south shelf. The second target worked a disciplined lean out and then a pause. Elevation went to 720 meters, and wind call grew for the eddy that curled off the spur. She traced the rhythm through the scope until the pattern wrote itself into timing. She let the reticle settle one more breath and pressed again. The impact kicked the shooter sideways, and the rifle on the far rock rolled off the edge. That sector went from sharp to empty in the space of one heartbeat. Bolt cycle. Safety touch. And eyes back to the glass. She sent clear across the net so movement could be measured, not guessed. The valley now felt wider. Yet one voice still spoke from the west. The west slope lay under a sag of camo net, almost still. Wind at the ridge top, cut from different angles, and pushed small streams of dust across the crest. Twigs at the skyline trembled in a stutter that did not match the valley floor. Range read near 800 meters and reminded her that wind sins grow with distance. She watched the tiny language of dust, grass, and the shiver of a dry branch until a thin pattern emerged where none should. The commander under the net did not show much, but intent has a shape. She set the hold to what the ridge was telling her, not what she wanted to see. Breath gathered and then paused as the crosshair touched an opening that felt earned. The report rolled long across the slope, and she stayed in the glass through the delay. The camo net eased and then sagged as if air had gone out of the hill. Nothing moved under it, and no correction followed from any other gun. The west died so quietly it felt like the mountain had decided to stop listening. She worked the bolt and then let the safety take the edge off the trigger. The PKM barked once more, and then lost its push without a brain to guide it. A lane opened across old rock, where there had been only angles and traps. Avery called set again and let the radio fall back against her vest. The world widened to include more than the reticle. She put her eyes on the team and the ground they would need to cross. She took a knee behind cover and wrote in the notebook with a pencil dulled by dust. Time. Distance. Wind. And the way each shot had asked to be taken. Notes lived beside the MGRS grids in case anyone ever needed to see the math. The Mk-13 went quiet on the stone as she laid it down for Noah Grant to reclaim. Her hands went back to the ANPRC 117G and the ANPRC 152A like they had never left. The ridge still carried wind, but the silence now felt different, like the day had finally moved to her side. Lieutenant Ethan Cole read the ground and shifted the rules of engagement to fit what now made sense. He signaled a hasty exploitation of the compound while the ridge stayed silent. The team tightened lines and moved with the wind instead of against it. Petty Officer, 2nd Class Noah Grant, led the approach with soft steps and a steady rifle. He managed dead space, checked door frames, and sliced angles with minimal silhouette. Hand signals passed down the file like quiet electricity. Petty Officer 2nd Class Caleb Brooks guarded the rear and watched the high ground behind them. He kept the exit path clear and paused only to scan corners that could hide a late threat. The route they had marked at first light stayed in his head. The outer door gave to a short hall with 2 rooms and a turn. Grant checked the latch, felt for play, and opened on a slow hinge while Brooks covered the cross. They entered on priority angles, cleared hard corners, and flowed to control. Inside the first room, a map wall held, routes drawn in grease pencil. A metal table carried a warm radio and a log of call signs that smelled like dust and coffee. Grant photographed pages, while Brooks bagged what mattered most. Lieutenant Ethan Cole moved through with a camera and set quick priorities. He captured the boards, pulled storage tins, and folded a pocket map that matched their valley. He packed the finds and left what would slow the team down. Outside, in cover, Staff Sergeant Avery Blake set the Mach 13 aside and went back to radios without pause. ANPRC 117G rode her shoulder to update the Joint Operations Center, while ANPRC 152A kept the team net short and clean. She pushed new MGRS positions and opened an extraction window. She confirmed a contingency landing zone if the ceiling lifted, but kept foot exfil as the plan that fit the weather and the ground. The element backed out the way they came. Prints light and spacing calm. The sky stayed gray and the valley felt different. And Avery checked time, grids, and the next safe slice of movement. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake raised the ANPRC 117G and passed a clean update to the Joint Operations Center. Weather still closed the sky. so the safe exfil window lived on the ground. She confirmed timing, distance, and risk, then noted the clock in her book and shifted back to the team net. The ANPRC 152A sat firm on her chest as she kept brevity tight and simple. She set pace and spacing with short calls that felt like steady footsteps. The marked foot exfil route stayed primary, while a contingency landing zone waited if the ceiling opened for a brief slice of time. Lieutenant Ethan Cole moved the element off the compound in a line that flowed with the terrain. Petty Officer Second Class Noah Grant handed the Mk-13, Mod 7, back into the team kit and went light for the walk. Petty Officer Second Class Caleb Brooks owned rear security and scanned the high points behind them. No one fired. Wind hissed along the ridge, and small stones clicked under soles that knew how to be quiet. The valley widened around them as they cleared the last fold of bad ground. At the edge of safety, Cole gave Avery a small nod that said, "Enough." She checked time against her hack, verified new MGRS grids, and kept the radios calm and alive. The bridge between ground and sky held because she stayed on it, steady and quiet, until the route bent toward home. The debrief room was small and plain, with a whiteboard and a valley map pinned to the wall. Gun oil hung in the air with old coffee and dust. Boots lined the baseboard like a quiet roll call. Lieutenant Ethan Cole walked the timeline from insertion to contact. He outlined the crossfire geometry. The delayed close air support due to low ceiling and a suspected man-pads threat. And the moment the plan had to change, people nodded once softly. Analysts pulled helmet camera files and synced time across feeds. Trajectory, elevation, and distance were plotted for 3 shots at about 650 meters, about 720 meters, and near 800 meters. Each trace matched a first-round hit. The data showed clean wind calls and solid dope for a .300 Winchester Magnum in the Mk-13, Mod 7 with a Leupold Mark V HD. No walking rounds. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake briefed her side in plain terms. She noted the 9-line prepared in advance, the pace plan, and the weather limits that kept a stack from forming. She kept it short because the facts were already on the board. Recommendations followed without drama. Avery would remain in the combat controller specialty and receive a slot for a suitable special operations or joint sniper course. The team logged it as recognition. There were no speeches. Avery folded her checklist, stowed the ANPRC 117G and the ANPRC 152A, and checked the training schedule. The room emptied quietly. The story did not climb into headlines. It moved quietly through training halls, sniper classrooms, and morning briefs. Instructors passed along a simple lesson written in dust and wind on a narrow ridge. They spoke of 3 shots as a case study in readiness, discipline, and calm under pressure. Charts showed clean wind calls and first-round decisions that protected a small team. Young operators listened and learned what competence sounds like when no one is watching. Staff Sergeant Avery Blake kept her Air Force specialty code as a combat controller and stayed on the Joint Terminal Attack Controller path. She received a slot for a suitable special operations or joint sniper course and treated it like another checkbox on a long road. Her radios, maps, and checklists went back to their places without ceremony. The real legacy lived in changed minds between communities that share the same fights. A job title stopped being a cage and became a set of tools carried with humility and skill. People remembered that the right decision can travel farther than rank when seconds are thin. The mountains in the east returned to their old quiet as wind crossed rock and sand like it always had. The silence felt different because it carried a small measure of respect. She did not shoot for applause. She shot because she had prepared, because a team needed time, and because responsibility asked for it. In the quiet after the last shot, People understood exactly what that means.